Hi everyone, this is Mr. Zhang, and today we'll be going over the math homework for Class P. This is for session U23. For number 10, working at their respective constant rates, machine 1 makes 240 copies in 8 minutes, and machine 2 makes 240 copies in 5 minutes. At these rates, how many more copies does machine 2 make in 4 minutes than machine 1 in 6 minutes? So we have two rates here, and a rate, you just have to compare two different quantities. So for machine 1, you have 240 copies in 8 minutes, and what you can find is a unit rate. So if you divide by 8 on both sides, in 1 minute, you can figure out that this machine will make 30 copies once you divide by 8. So now that you have the unit rate, you can figure out machine 1 in 6 minutes. You can just multiply by 6, and that would be 180 copies. Then you have to do the same thing for machine 2. So for machine 2, you know that it makes 240 copies in 5 minutes. So to find a unit rate, you have to divide by 5 on both sides, and that would be 48 copies in 5 minutes. And then now that you have the unit rate, you can then figure out how many it can make in 4 minutes. So that means you have to multiply by 4, and that would be 192 copies. So when you compare the two final answers, you have 180 copies for machine 1 versus 192 copies for machine 2. And 192 minus 180 is 12 more copies. So that's going to be choice B. Next, for number 11, among the people attending a convention in Europe, 32% travel from Asia, and 45% of those who travel from Asia are women. What percent of the people at the convention are women who traveled from Asia? So here, you don't know how many people are at this convention, but because this is a percent problem, you can assume 100 people, just to make everything easy. So from this 100 people, you know that 32% travel from Asia. And because you chose 100 as the total, 32% of 100 is just 32 people. That means that 68 people are not from Asia. Now from here, you have 45% of those who travel from Asia are women. So 45% of this 32 are women. That means that 55% are men. So from here, you want to figure out what percent of the people at the convention are women who traveled from Asia. So that's going to be 45% of 32. So that's what you need to find. And when you have 45% of 32, that would be 0.45 multiplied by 32. And when you move the decimal point 2 places, that would be 14.4 people. So that would be 14.4 out of the total of 100. Because the percent is just part of a whole, so the part is going to be the women who travel from Asia. That's 14.4 over 100. So that's going to be 0.144. Next, for number 12, in the xy plane, points R and S have coordinates -2, 1 and 4, -7 respectively. Point P is the midpoint of line segment RS. What's the coordinate of point P? So P is the midpoint, and the midpoint is just another word for average. So to find the midpoint, what you have to do is just to add the x values, or the x coordinates, and divide by 2, and then add the y coordinates, and then divide that by 2. So to find the midpoint of -2, 1, and 4, -7, you have to add the x values, so that's going to be -2 plus 4 divided by 2, and 1 plus -7 divided by 2. So then that's going to be 2 over 2, comma, -6 over 2, or 1, comma, -3. And that's choice C. Next one, number 13, Steve's property tax is $140 less than Patricia's property tax. If Steve's property tax is $1960, then Steve's property tax is what percent less than Patricia's property tax, their nearest 0.1%. The keyword here is percent less, and this is a percent change question, and percent change is new minus old divided by old times 100%. So in this case, we have to find Steve's property tax versus Patricia's, and Patricia's the original or the old value. So because Steve's is Patricia minus 140, you know that Steve is 1960, and that's equal to P minus 140. So to solve for Patricia's property tax, you have to add 140 to both sides. So you figure out that Patricia's is equal to 2100. So when you substitute into the percent change, that will be 2100 minus 1960 divided by, it should be the other way around. That's 1960 minus 2100 divided by 2100. Because again, the old is the original, which is Patricia's. And Steve is the new, or the the new, which is the first part of this numerator. So 1960 minus 2100 will be negative 140, and you're dividing that by 2100. I want to multiply this by 100%. So the two zeros will cancel out, and then 14 and 21 cross cancels to form 2 and 3. So this will be negative 2/3%, or you also have to multiply by this 0 here. So that would be negative 20 over 3%, or negative 6.6 repeating percent. And that's choice A once you round. Next, for number 14, the base of a triangle has length B, and the altitude corresponding to the base has length H, and B is equal to 2 times H. Which of the following expresses the area of the triangle in terms of H? So you have to draw a triangle here, and you know that the base is B, and the base is given as 2 times the height, whereas the altitude is H, or the height. So the area of this triangle, remember, is 1/2 base times height, and the base must be perpendicular to the height, or the altitude. So that's going to be 1/2 the base, which is 2H, times the height, which is H. In this case, 2 and 1/2 cancels out, and you just get H squared, choice C. Next, for number 15, how many different 2-digit positive integers are there in which the tens digit is greater than 6 and the units digit is less than 4? So this is really just a counting principle question, or a tree diagram. In this case, you have 2 possibilities, one for the tens place, one for the ones place. And here for the tens place, you want a tens digit to be greater than 6. So that's going to be 7, 8, or 9. So you have 3 options here. And then for the ones place, it has to be less than 4. So that's 0, 1, 2, or 3. So you have 4 options there. So when you multiply 3 times 4, that's going to be 12 numbers, choice D. So if you draw a tree diagram, you can have 70, 71, 72, or 73, or 80, 81, 82, or 83, or 90, 91, 92, or 93. And those are your 12. All right, for the following question, select all the answer choices that apply. So Chris entered a number in his calculator and erroneously multiplied the number pi 2073 instead of 2.073, getting an incorrect product. Which of the following is a single operation that Chris could perform on his calculator to correct the error? So here you accidentally multiplied. So if you put in the number 1, instead of multiplying by 2.073, you take your number and you actually multiply by 2073. So you're supposed to get 2.073. Instead, you got 2073. So to turn 2073 into 2.073, you have to move the decimal point 3 places left. And to do that, you can either divide by 1,000, which is choice D. And if you divide by 1,000, that's the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal, because that's just keep, change, flip. That's multiplying by 1 over 1,000, because originally 1,000 is 1,000 over 1, so the reciprocal of 1,000 is 1 over 1,000. Or that means multiplying by 0.001, which is 1,000ths. And that's choice A. So A and D both work. Okay, and here is a summary for this page. Okay, questions 17 to 20 are based on the following data. So for number 17, how many of the 50 states were in the 5 population categories from A through E? So from A through E, when you read this bar graph, you just have to add these numbers. So the first one is 15, the second one is 9, the third one is 12, the fourth is 3, the fifth is 4, and those are the only ones that you add. So if you add 15, 9, 12, 3, and 4, this would be 14, and 9, that's 23. So the answer will be 43, choice B. Next, for number 18, in 2000, the population of West Virginia was 1.8 million. Now, the ratio of the population of Georgia to that of West Virginia was 9:2. In which population category was Georgia? So here you have the ratio, Georgia to West Virginia is 9:2. And remember, ratio is the same thing as a fraction, but with just this colon symbol, and it's been simplified. In reality, though, the population of West Virginia is 1.8 million. So 1.8 million is 1,800,000. So from here to go from 2 to 1.8 million, you have to multiply by 900,000. Same as on the other side, you also have to multiply by 900,000. And that means the population of Georgia will be 81 or 8.1 million. So if you go through the categories for 8.1 million, that would be between these two numbers. That's going to be between 8 and 9.9. That's category E. That's choice D. Next, for number 19, the number of states in the 2 population categories C and D was approximately what percent greater than the number of the number in the 4 population categories from E through H. All right, so you have to figure out the number of states in category C to D. That's these 2 numbers here. So C and D is going to be 12 plus 3, or 15. I want to figure out this was approximately what percent greater than the number in the 4 population from E through H. So from E through H, we have 4 plus 1 plus 2 plus 4. That would be 11. So again, because you want a percent greater, that means it's a percent change question. And the formula for percent change is new minus old divided by old times 100%. So in this case, to figure out the new minus old, you want to know it was what percent greater. So the new one will be 15 minus the old will be the 11. So it'll be 15 minus 11 divided by 11, which will give you positive 4 out of 11. So here, and that would be 4 over 11 times 100%. And then here you can't really cross simplify here, although you could estimate this is about 4 over 10, which is about 40%. But if you do 4 divided by 11, 11 goes to 43 times. This would be 6 times. So it would be 0.363 times 100%. Or this will be 36.3%. And that would be choice A is the best bet. You can also just estimate with the 4 over 10. Next, for number 20, the median of the 50 state populations was in which population category? So median just means middle number. So when you have the middle number, you just have to make sure that you cross-cancel everything correctly. So for example, to cross out the 15, the smallest one, you'll have to cross-cancel, this would be 14 here. So then you still have the 9 in category B. And then you have 12 in category C. So you cross out 15 from the front. You also have to cross out 14 and then 15 from the back. And then when you eventually keep crossing out, cross out the 9 here, as well as the 7, 8, 9 here. So the median has to be in category C. So just be careful here, because you have to find the median of a frequency table. And when you find the median of a frequency table, you essentially have to write the letters out multiple times. So really this 15 represents 15 A's, and this 4 represents 4 H's. And then the G is 2 G's, and if you keep crossing out, eventually you see that the median has to be here in the C category. Alright, next for number 21, if the cube root of x is equal to 3 and x is equal to square root of y, what's the value of y? So to solve for x first, you can do the inverse, which is power of 3. So when you cube both sides, you get x isolated on the left, because the cube root of 3 cancels out with the power of 3. And 3 cubed is 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27. So if x is equal to 27, you can substitute in. That means that 27 is equal to the square root of y. To solve for y, you'll need to square both sides. So then y would be equal to 27 times 27. And the answer will be 2079. here is the summary for this page. Next, for number 22, the figure above shows a normal standard deviation with mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1, including the approximate percentages of the distribution corresponding to the 6 regions shown. Ian rode the bus to work last year, and his travel times were approximately normally distributed, with a mean of 35 minutes and a standard deviation of 5 minutes. According to the figure shown, approximately what percent of Ian's travel times to work last year were less than 40 minutes? So you just have to apply this distribution of data, or this frequency table, into Ian's bus times. So the mean, or the average, is 35 minutes. And the mean is represented by 0 here. So this would be 35 minutes. And the standard deviation would just be 5 minutes. So you have one standard deviation means you have to take 35 and plus 5 minutes. So this would be 40 minutes. Whereas if you go to the other side, one standard deviation less would be subtract 5. That would be just 30 minutes. And if you go 2 standard deviations, that would be 45 minutes and 25 minutes. So what this means is 2% of all the bus rides were more than 45 minutes, while 2% were less than 25 minutes. 14% were between 25 minutes and 30 minutes. 14% were between 40 minutes and 45 minutes. And then 34% were between 35 minutes and 30 minutes. That's this one here. While another 34% were between 35 and 40 minutes. So in this case, we want to figure out what percent of the travel time to work last year were less than 40 minutes. So less than 40 minutes means you have to include these 4 regions. So that would be 34, 34, 14, and 2. So if you add everything together, that would be choice E, 84 minutes. Next, for 23, for all integers x, the function f is defined as follows. F of x can be 2 things. If x is even, it's x minus 1. Then if x is odd, it's going to be x plus 1. Now, if a and b are integers and f of a plus f of b is equal to a plus b, which of the following statements must be true? So this is your function, and a function is just an input-output machine. So all you have to do is just substitute in and just follow the rules here. So a and b are integers, and you're given that f of a plus f of b is the same thing as just a plus b. So you want to figure out which of the following has to be true. So a couple things could happen. You can either have odd and odd, or odd and even and odd, or then even. So there are 4 possibilities here. So what you want to try is substitute in 1 and 1, substitute in 1 and 2, substitute in 2 comma 1, and substitute in 2 comma 2. And then you pretty much have everything covered. So the first case is odd, or 1 comma 1. F of 1 plus f of 1. That would be, since 1 is odd, you'll have to add 1 to each. So that would be 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, or 2 plus 2, and this is equal to 4. And that's not the same as just 1 plus 1, which is a plus b. So therefore, you can't have a is odd and b is odd. So choice E is wrong. Then you go to the next scenario, odd, even. So that's going to be 1 comma 2. So a equals 1, b equals 2. So f of 1 plus f of 2 would be, f of 1 would be 1 plus 1, because 1 is odd. Since 2 is even, this would be 2 minus 1, and that would be 1. And 2 plus 1 is 3. Well, that's still not the same, or actually in this case, that is the same as a plus b, which is just 1 plus 2. So in this case, A could be odd and B could be even. All right, and then you try the next one. So even, odd. And we see if we try A equals 2, B equals 1, we see that f of 2 plus f of 1 would just be the same thing as above. It would be 2 minus 1 plus 1 plus 1, or 1 plus 2, that's equal to 3, which is still equal to A plus B, or 1 plus 2. So that's still fine. The last case to try would be if both of them are even. So if A is equal to 2, B is equal to 2, then f of 2 plus f of 2, since they're both even, we'll have to use this rule. You have to subtract 1. 2 minus 1 plus 2 minus 1, or 1 plus 1, which is equal to 2, and that's not the same as 2 plus 2, which is A plus B, so you can't have both of them being even. You also can't have both of them equal to one another, because we tried that here. And you just have the last two left, if A plus B is odd, or if A is equal to negative B. So to test it out, you want to try a negative number. So if you try, let's say, 5 with negative 5, and then you substitute in. Well, they're both odd, which means you have to add 1. So this would be 5 plus 1, and negative 5 plus 1, or 6 plus a negative 4, which is equal to 2. And here, if you try A plus B, where A is equal to 5, B is equal to negative 5, that's equal to 5 plus negative 5, or 0. And 0 is not the same as 2. So you know that A can't be equal to negative B. The answer has to be choice C. So A plus B has to be odd. So it has to be even and an odd number. You can do this by just testing out numbers, by substituting really easy numbers like 1 and 2 here. Next to number 24, y raised to negative second power plus 2 times y raised to negative first power minus 15 is equal to 0. Then which of the following could be the value of y? So when you have b raised to the negative a, that's 1 over b to the a. A negative exponent means reciprocal. So y to the negative second power just means 1 over y squared. And here 2 times y to the negative first, you have to do the exponent before you multiply. So it'll be 2 over y to the first, or just y. And you're subtracting 15, and this is equal to 0. So what you want to do here is actually multiply everything by y squared to get rid of the denominator. And then you have to distribute this y squared. So you have 1 plus 2y minus 15y squared, and that's equal to just 0. And then you want the 15 to be positive, so you move everything to the right side. That would be 15y squared minus 2y minus 1 is equal to 0. So from here, you can try to factor by multiplying 1 and 15 to do factor by grouping, and 115 multiplies to 15. So if you write out the factors of 15, you have 115, 3, and 5. So that 3 and 5 can combine to form negative 2 if you have positive 3 and negative 5. So you will break down negative 2y as positive 3y minus 5y. And from here, you can factor out separately. Here you can factor out 3y. And from second one, you would have to factor out negative 1. So you have 3y times 5y plus 1. And you have negative 1 times 5y plus 1. That's equal to 0. So from here, you can factor out 5y plus 1. That's one of the factors. The other factor will be 3y minus 1, which is left over. So both of these are equal to 0. That means that 5y plus 1 is equal to 0, or 3y minus 1 is equal to 0. So y could be equal to negative 1/5 or y could be equal to positive 1/3. Now, I don't see positive 1/3 as one of the choices here, but I do see choice C, negative 1/5. So to solve this problem, you need to use this law of exponent. Negative exponent equals reciprocal, as well as factor by grouping. And you have to use factor by grouping because the coefficient of the quadratic term, the y squared term, is not equal to 1. Okay, for the next one, you have to select all the answers that apply. So you have 6 numbers shown, and they're listed in increasing order. Which of the following values could be the range of all these 6 numbers? You have to indicate all the values. Now, they're listed in increasing order, which means the range is just the biggest minus the smallest. Which will be 2a minus 3.7. Now, a can be anything between 4.1 and 8.5. And because you can have decimals and you can have duplicates, a could be equal to either of these endpoints. So in this case, if a was, let's say, the smallest, which is 4.1, which is the minimum value, then 2a would be 8.2. Now that won't work because 8.2 has to be bigger than 9.2. So a cannot be equal to 4.1. Here, 2a has to be at least equal to 9.2. So if you divide both sides by 2, you get that a has to be about 4.6. That's the smallest value. So if a is equal to 4.6, 2a would be 9.2. And then you can just do the range, 9.2 minus 3.7. That'll be 5.5. So it has to be at least 5.5. The smallest range has to be at least 5.5. So A and B can't be it. Now the other piece is that you can have a maximum, and that's if A is equal to 8.5. So if A is equal to 8.5, 2A would be equal to 17. And then you would have to do 17 minus 3.7. Make sure you line up the decimals. That would be 13.3. And this would be the maximum range. So you can't have a range greater than 13.3, so F is also out. So the answer has to be C, D, and E. Okay, and here is the summary for this page. All right, next for number 1, Pete has received grades of 76, 83, and 93 on 3 algebra tests. What would he have to average on the next 2 tests, or his overall average of the 5 tests would be 90. So remember here that average is equal to the total divided by the number of data. So you want an average of 90. So the average of 5 is equal to 90, which is going to be the total of all 5 divided by 5. So in this case, if you multiply by 5 on both sides, you know that the total has to be 450. Now, if the total of the 5 tests is 450, he already has 76, 83, and 93. So if you add those, that would be 252. So he already has 252. I'm going to do 450 minus 252. So the total on the next 2 has to be 198. To figure out the average of the next 2, we'll will be the total, or 198, of these two tests divided by 2, which will be 99. So you must have an average at 99 on the next two tests in order to get a total overall average of 90. Next, for number 2, if you count 1, 2, 3, etc., naming one number per second, how many days will it take you to count to 1 million? So you want to figure out how many days are in 1 million seconds. Well, you know that 1 day is equal to 24 hours, and that 1 hour is equal to 60 minutes, and then 1 minute is equal to 60 seconds. So to figure out the number of seconds in a day, that would be 24 times 60 times 60. So you have to take that 1 million total and just divide it by this number here. So you can cross simplify. So 2 of the zeros will cancel out, and you're left with 10,000 divided by 6 times 6 times 24. So 10,000 you can factor out a factor of 4. That would be 2,500. So then you have 2,500 divided by 6 times 6 times 6. And from here, you can have a common factor of 2 again. Then that's 1,250 divided by 6 times 6 times 3. And then you can divide this as 125 and 10. And 10 you can factor out another 2. That would be 5 left. And you don't have any more factors. So the numerator is 125 times 5. And the denominator is 6 times 3 times 3. So here you can pretty much estimate because the choices are really far away. Here you can kind of pretend that 5 and 6 will cancel out. That's about 125 divided by 9. So you know the answer is going to be somewhere in the teens. And choice B is the only one that's in the teens. So that's your best answer. Next one, number 3. During a storm, a flagpole broke 18 feet above the ground. The top hit the ground 24 feet from the base of the pole. What was the height of the flagpole before the storm? So this flagpole broke 18 feet above the ground, and the top hit the ground 24 feet from the base to the pole. So this was 18 feet, and then the top hit the ground 24 feet from the base of the pole. That's 24 here. There's a part that broke. So this is your right triangle. You want to find the last piece, which is the hypotenuse. To figure this out, you can use Pythagorean triplets to see if these are Pythagorean triplets. And if you divide by 6, 18 is 6 times 3, 24 is 6 times 4. So the hypotenuse should be 6 times 5, which would be 30 feet. Because this is a 3, 4, 5 Pythagorean triplet. Which satisfies a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now you want to actually know the original height of the flagpole before the storm. So this, if you put it back up, this would be 30 feet. And there's your flag. The base is 18 feet. So 30 plus 18 was choice C, 48 feet. All right, next one, number 4. Dealer brought an article for $7 and sold it for $8. Bought it back for $9 and sold it for $10. How much profit did he make? So remember, profit is the money that you get. So it's the total revenue but you have to subtract the total cost. So total profit is equal to total revenue minus the total cost, which means if he sold it for $8 and then sold it for 10, he received a total of $18 in revenue. But then you have to subtract what he bought it for, which is 9 plus 7. So it costs him 9 plus 7, which will be $16. So 18 minus 16 will be $2 profit. That's choice C. So he received $18, but he's had to spend $16 to get those $18. So it's only like he got $2 extra. Next, for number 5, in a school with as students and teachers, there are 20 students for each teacher. Which the equation must be true? So if there are 20 students for each teacher, that means that one teacher is equal to 20s. So that means that you take the number of teachers times 20, and that's equal to s. And that's choice A. Because you have t teachers, that means you have to multiply by t on the left. So then you have to multiply the students by t as well, and that would be 20 t students. And that means that students equal to 20 times t. Next, for number 6, if the radius of a circle is increased by 3 pi units, what's the ratio of the new circumference to the new diameter? So the radius circle was r. You take this r and then you increase it by 3 pi. And now you have a new bigger circle. So here you want the ratio of the new circumference to the new diameter. So here the new circumference will be 2 times pi times r plus 3 pi. And the new diameter is just r plus 3 pi. The diameter will be r plus 3 pi times 2. So notice that the difference is just pi. And the answer is choice D. So for any circle, the circumference is equal to pi times the diameter. So the new circumference will always be the new diameter times pi. So that's why the answer is D. Next, for number 7, if m and n represents 2 distinct prime numbers, then m plus n is. So here, you can just try out 2 prime numbers. So 2 and 3, the 2 smallest prime numbers. If you add 2 plus 3, it's 5. So it's not even, so we can eliminate that. And 5 is prime, so we can eliminate B. But it doesn't have to be just 2 plus 3. It could be, let's say, 3 plus 5. Or try the next 2 prime numbers, or the second and third prime numbers. That's equal to 8. So 8's not prime, and 8's not even odd. So the answer is choice E, none of these. Next, for number 8, you have to multiply your age by 5, and then add 3, double that result, subtract 6, and then divide that by half your age. What's your answer? So here you can solve this by using a variable. Your age, you can say A, multiply by 5, and you want to add 3. Then you want to double this result. So when you double this result, you have to distribute. That will be equal to 2 times 5a, or 10a, plus 2 times 3, or 6. Then you want to subtract 6, which will cancel out that. And you want to divide this result by half your age, so a over 2. Now, when you divide by a over 2, that's the same thing as doing keep, change, flip. So that's 10a times 2 over a. And here a, your age, will cancel out, and 10 times 2 is always equal to 20. So no matter what number you start with, you always get 20, because you end up cross-canceling the number you started with. All right, and here is the summary for this page. Next, for number 9, the numerator and the denominator of a fraction are positive numbers, and the product is 588. If the fraction is equivalent to 3/4, what is the sum of the numerator and the denominator? So here, the numerator and the denominator are positive, and the product is 588. But this is equal to 3/4. So here, you want to figure out the sum of the numerator and the denominator. So because you know that n over d is equal to 3/4, if you cross multiply, you know that 3d is equal to 4n. And when you multiply the numbers, it's equal to 588. So here you only want the sum of the numerator and the denominator. So after you have the proportion and you cross multiplied, you have this equation. Now this is a system of equations with these two equations. What you can do is you can solve for d by dividing both sides by 3. And then you can take 4n over 3 and substitute in for the variable d. So that will give you n times 4n over 3, or 4 times n squared divided by 3 is equal to 588. And from here, you can multiply both sides by 3/4 to isolate the n squared on the left side. So we multiply both sides by 3/4, you get that n squared is equal to 588 times 3 divided by 4. So 588, you can divide by 4 first. So it's 147, and then if you do 147 times 3, you get 441. So then it's that n squared is equal to 441. And when you do the square root on both sides, you get that n is equal to 21. So once you figure out that the n, or the numerator, is equal to 21, here you know that 3 times 7 is equal to 21. So you also multiply the denominator by 7. You know that the actual fraction is 21 over 28. So once you know the entire fraction 21 over 28, then you can do the sum of the numerator and the denominator by just adding 21 plus 28, and you get 49. Choice B. Next, for number 10, based on past records, the winning distance in the discus throw in the Olympics can be approximated by the equation D is equal to 176 plus 1.75 times T, where D is measured in feet and T is the number of years since 1948. Using this formula, in what year will the winning distance in the discus throw be 260 feet? So here you have an equation, and 260 is the distance. So that's D is equal to 260. So you just replace variable D with 260 and just solve for T. So you have 260 is equal to 176 plus 1.75 T. So here I have to subtract 176 from both sides. And that will give you 84 is equal to 1.75 T. Now 1.75 is really 7 over 4 times T, and that's equal to 84. So from here you can multiply both sides by 4/7. And 7 and 84 cross cancels to 12, and 12 times 4 is 48. So you would need to add 48 years to 1948. So 1948 plus 48 would be 1996, and that's choice B. Next, for number 11, which of the 5 measurements is closest to your height? So real issue here, just your units. And you know that 1 meter is equal to 100 centimeters. So 150 centimeters is about 1.5 meters, and that would be the closest. 15 centimeters is too short. 15 meters is way too tall, and that's like to the 2nd floor almost. We're a 3rd floor. Next, for number 12, the rectangle has an area of 128 square centimeters and a width of 8 centimeters. What's its perimeter? So here just have to draw a rectangle. You know that the width is 8. Now since the area is 120, you know that area is length times width. So here the width is 8. So that means that the length times 8 is equal to 120. And from here, if 8L is equal to 120, divide by 8 on both sides, you get that L is equal to 15. So here to find the perimeter, you would just have to add the widths and add the two lengths, or just do 2L plus 2W. That's going to be 15 times 2 or 30, plus 8 times 2 or 16, and that's going to be 46. Choice C. Next, for number 13, replace each of A, B, C, D with a letter, these letters with a number to form pairs of numbers whose product is 20. For example, 5, 4. So you have these 4 coordinates. The sum A plus B plus C plus D is equal to. So here, the product has to be 20. So that means you have to multiply it to 20. So A has to be 2. B would have to be 1/4. C would need to be 20 over 8, or 10 over 4, or 5 over 2. And for D, that would be 20 divided by 0.4, or 200 over 4, or 50. So if you add everything up, you have to do 2 plus 0.25 plus 2.5 plus 50. So that would be 54.75, choice D. Next one, number 14. After 4 tests, Suzanne's average mean score is M. After Suzanne receives an 83 on the 5th test, what's her new average mean score? So remember, average is the total sum divided by the number of data. And in this case, we know it's equal to M after 4 tests. So that's going to be the total of 4 divided by 4 is M. Or the total of the 4 tests is equal to 4 times M. Now, after Suzanne receives an 83 on her 5th test, you want the new average. So you have to take that total score, and then you have to add 83. That's a 5th test. And now you have to divide by 5. So you have to take her total, which is 4M, add 83 to it, and now divide by 5. And that's choice B. Okay, and here is the summary for this page. Next for number 20, a leap year has 366 days, and the year 2000 was a leap year. Rick's 49th birthday on April 1st, 1999 was a Thursday. So Rick's 50th birthday was on so because the year 2000 was the leap year, to go from April 1st, 1999 to April 1st, 2000, that would be 366 days. And the pattern is that 1 week is equal to 7 days. So every 7 days, it's going to be Thursday again. So if you take 366 divided by 7, that's going to give you a remainder of 2. So you just have to go 2 days forward from Thursday. So that would be Friday and then Saturday. So in 2000, it's a Saturday. Next for number 21, a painter had finished painting 2/3 of a room by 2 p.m. and 3/4 of the same room by 2:30 p.m. At this rate, when does she finish painting the room? So between 2 and 2:20, she painted 3/4 minus 2/3, because that's the difference. So the difference is 3/4 minus 2/3. Here the LCD is 12. That's 9 over 12 minus 8 over 12, or 1/12. So 1/12 of the room is painted in 30 minutes. And you want to still finish painting the other 1/4. And 1/4 is really 3/12. So if you still need 3/12 need to finish, and it takes 30 minutes to paint 1/12, Well, you just take 30 minutes times 3, and that would be 1 hour, 30 minutes. So you have to take 230 plus 1 hour, 30 minutes. And here you have 60, so you have to carry the 1. That would be 4 o'clock. Choice B. Next, from number 22, the scholar arithmetic, written in 1815, includes this conversion table. How many more gallons are in 1 puncheon of beer than in 1 puncheon of ale? So here you have to convert 1 puncheon beer to 1 puncheon of ale. So in terms of the puncheon, you know that 2 barrels make 1 puncheon. So for the beer, it's 1 puncheon, which is equal to 2 barrels. But each barrel makes kilns, so 2 Ks. So if 1 barrel is equal to 2 K, that means that the 2 barrels will be 4 kilns. And then from the next one, you know that you want to convert 1 killed is equal to 2 firkins. So that means that the 4 killed in the 1 puncheon will be equal to 8 firkins. And then to turn this into the beer, you have to multiply this by 9. That would be 72 gallons. But for the ale, you have to multiply this 8 by 8. That would only be 64 gallons of ale. So when you take the difference, 72 minus 64 will be a difference of 8 gallons. That's choice E. All right, next for number 23, you have to place the 9 integers, -4 to 4, into the 9 boxes without repetition, so that the sum of the integers at any 2 consecutive boxes is a perfect square number. There are 2 different numbers that could be in the middle square. What's the sum of these 2 numbers? So here you can just start with 2 numbers and just guess and check. Remember, consecutive means that it has to be next to each other. So the only perfect squares that will be available are 0, 1, and 4. Because those are the only perfect squares. You can't have 9 because 5 and 4 is 9. You can't have a 5 in here. So you can only make 0, 1, and 4. So just start guessing and checking. If you start with, let's say, -4, then -4 can only go with the +4, so that these 2 will be 0. And from +4, you can combine that with a -3 to form +1, or 3, and then -2, 2, -1, 1, and then 0. So -2 could be one of the numbers there. And then you can also have to repeat this. So the other way, with some of these numbers, you can just do a guess and check. If you try 4 first, that's the perfect square. You can have well, you try the -4, that would be, then from here you'll be stuck because -4 can't combine with any other number. So 4, you can also try -3, which will give you 1. And from -3, you can have +3, and then -2, +2, -1, +1, 0, and then, well, here you can't do the -4 at the end, so that's not going to work. So you can start with the 4, then you can try some of the other numbers. If you start with, say, 1, so 1 can combine with 3 to give you 4, and 3 can combine with -3. Then you can have 4 here, then combine with -4, and from here you are stuck again. So -4 is definitely an issue. So if you start with -4 first, you have to have +4 to cancel that out. And then from here you can do, try putting a 0 here. And from 0 you can start with 1, then -1, and then 2 and -2, and then 3 and -3. So that would be the other one, where -1 is also in the middle. And 2 plus -1 is equal to choice A, -3. All right, next to number 24. What's the ratio of the measure of the interior angle of equilateral triangle to the measure of the interior angle of a square? So the interior angle, just see inside angle. For an equilateral triangle, all angles are equal to 60 degrees. And for a square, all angles are 90 degrees. So you just have 60 to 90, and that's kind of simplified to 2 to 3. Next, for number 25, what is the smallest whole number value of n such that 3 or 30 raised to n power is larger than 10 billion? So you want powers of 30. That will give you something that's larger than 10 billion. And from here, you can actually turn this 30 into 3 times 10. And when you raise both of them to the n, you can distribute this n. So this is really 3 to the n times 10 to the n. So if you look at 10 billion, and just count the number of zeros, you have 10 zeros. So if you try, since you want the smallest whole number, we want to start with a equals 5. Well, that won't work because 3 to the 5th power times 10 to the 5th power, that'll only be in the 10,000s, and 3 to the 5th power is not that much to overcome this 10,000. So then you want to try 3 to the 6th, and also 3 to the 7th. So if you try 3, this will be 243, and when you multiply by another 3, that will be 729. That will be 729 million, which is a little closer, and we multiply by another 3. That's finally 4 digits, so 2,187 times 10 million will be more than 10 billion because you have 7 zeros here with 4 digits, so that would be 11 digits, which is exactly what you need. And that's will be choice C. Next, for number 26, for any 3 consecutive months, what's the least possible number of days? So the shortest month, you know, is February. So February can have 28 days. January has 31. And March also has 31. but April has 30. So you would add February to April. So that's 28 plus 31 plus 30, and that would be 89, choice B. December also has 31 days, so you can't do December to February. Okay, and here is the summary for this last page. Thank you everyone for joining me today. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll talk to you guys next time. All right, bye everyone.